Welcome to the channel. With all of the price drops and sales and what have you on the Lenovo Legion Go that have been happening recently, you might be wondering, okay, is it a good thing to buy? What does it do that some of the competition doesn't do? Obviously the big screen is a big draw, but one of the things that Lenovo has kind of added to this thing is kind of like a Nintendo Switch. This has detachable controllers. Unlike the Nintendo Switch, the controllers actually kind of do something you might say completely different when you detach them. And that is the Legion Go's FPS mode, where you hold this controller in your hand, and this one here magnetically clamps into a base and actually becomes a kind of weird looking mouse that you can use for FPS games. So they call that FPS mode. And what we're going to do in this video is we're going to take a look at the Legion Go's FPS mode, try a little bit of gaming on it, see how it works, and we'll see if this is a neat feature or not. So first off, and in the testing I've done so far, I found that it's always best to do all this stuff before you start a game. If you start the game regularly, like the game I've been playing around with is Borderlands 3. So if you start Borderlands 3 regularly and then you take off the controllers, it kind of works, but weird stuff happens. So we're going to go ahead and take the controllers off first. So what we're going to do is there are some latches on the back here that you have to squeeze and then pop the controllers down. Hopefully you can see that. And I'll do the same thing with the controller over here. Squeeze that latch and pop it down. So I'm going to put the actual tab down here. Maybe I'll put it over here to get too much reflection from being on it. But here we have the controllers. Now this is the one that's going to end up being the mouse. If you look at the bottom here, what you can see is there's a switch, and there's actually a little sensor here for the mouse bit. So I'm going to switch this to FPS mode. And what we do with it is we stick it into the base. There's actually a little magnet in here, so it kind of clicks on. So we've got our mouse, and if you look on the screen, you can actually see that it's functioning as a mouse right now. I have it backwards, so kind of looks sort of like a weird flight stick. Of course, there's no like flight stick control here. It's just a mouse. And so we can see that the mouse is working here. We got some button control. And this controller right here, you're meant to hold, I believe, in your other hand. And you can use this kind of, by default, it's mapped to WASD, I think. And you have the other controls here that you can use and the buttons on the bottom. So what we need to do first is we need to really set this up. Lenovo has some default configurations that might work with the game you're using, but given that we're simulating mouse and keyboard here, and a keyboard has a lot of keys, you might expect to have to do some mapping. And for Borderlands 3, you could actually play a little bit using the default, but the problem was when you started to do things like, say, wanting to pick up an item, there wasn't a button map to do that by default. So you have to do a little bit of mapping, and where do we go to do the mapping? Well, we're going to go into Legion Space, which is where all of that stuff is. So we go to Legion Space, we go over to Controllers, and what we can do is we can change the profile. What I've done, played a little bit on this last night, so I go to Button Mapping, and you can change profiles for your controllers. Now we're in FPS mode, so we're going to tap on that. Oop, tap in the right place. By default, there is a default profile and a couple of presets for games that aren't Borderlands 3. So I kind of had to create my own. So I clicked on Add Template, and what it did was it copied the FPS default into another slot and lets us edit it. So if I select BL3, my Borderlands 3 profile, and I hit the options button, or at least I attempt to. I got to select it first. There we go. And view edit. That's what I want to do here. So you could actually see, okay, we see part of the buttons here. If we hit LB and RB, then we can look at back and forth at different buttons. And I didn't map anything to the face buttons because they're really kind of hard to hit while you're holding this in the mouse way because your hand's kind of there. But you can map stuff to them. But what I had to do is I had to map a few things to the common keys to use to interact with things in Borderlands 3. Now, if you want to map a key, it's not actually that hard to do. You just tap on the one you want, and you can select an action. So, for example, let's say I want to map the button here to tab. So I tap what I want, hit tab, and now the button down here is mapped to tab. So it's fairly simple, if maybe a little bit tedious to map stuff, but once you've done it once for a particular game, well, that's pretty much it. So what we want to do now is we want to take a look and see how well does this stuff maybe work inside a game. So I'm going to start up Borderlands 3. I'm going to pause the video for a bit because who wants to see the loading screen for stuff. So we'll come back when we get Borderlands 3 loaded and see how it plays. So we're back and we've got Borderlands 3 loaded. Now, just a couple of things. So you can see that using the mouse here is enabling me to look around, and using the controller enables me to move around here. So we'll actually do a little gameplay, see how this works. But before we do, just one disclaimer here. I've played most of my time on Borderlands 3 on the PlayStation. So I'm used to using this with a controller, and that's how I've been playing it, actually mostly on the Legion Go. So playing like this is actually fairly new territory for me here for this game. So, and not quite used to the control remapping yet, so if I accidentally hit the wrong button, well, don't be too surprised. And I have, in case you're wondering what this is, I have propped the Go here up on some couple of pencils just so that we can get airflow through here, because while we're running a game, we definitely are going to need to have the fan on. So this is just giving a little airflow in case you're wondering what the heck are these two things sticking out from under the Go. Now, normally when you would be playing like this, you would just use the kickstand. But if I use the kickstand, then you guys can't see the screen at all on the camera. So we're laying it flat, but we are propping it up so we can get airflow underneath the tablet here so we can actually play. So let me turn the sound on and we'll run through Joey's mansion here, see how we do. Well, you still at least get one loading screen. I'll try to keep some of this stuff on camera, but may not be entirely possible to keep everything. One thing I should mention here is you guys can hear the sound, but I can't. So. So you can use the mouse wheel to switch weapons here.
They'll be singing songs about that one.
There is a mouse wheel, it's right here.
Got it.
Ah, here comes the boss. The mini-boss. lift. So we'll pause it for now. So we can see a good demo here. Yeah, despite the bad angles, actually plays pretty good. So you can see that there's actually a mouse wheel here you can use in Borderlands anyway to switch weapons. So I had mapped some of the use keys and grenade and secondary to here. Wasn't mapped that way by default, but by default there was no way to actually throw a grenade. So kind of ruins the toss a bunch of grenades playstyle if you don't map that. So it's actually pretty good. It takes some getting used to if you're used to playing it with a controller, but it is an option of actually carrying your Legion Go somewhere you have a flat surface, and you essentially have a built-in mouse, so there's less stuff that you got to pack. Now, how well will this do for somebody who is used to playing mouse and keyboard? Well, I will leave that to people that do that normally more than I do. I've been playing a lot of these games on consoles, so I'm used to controller. But this is an interesting control option for you to use if you would prefer, aiming with the mouse and so forth. Well, you have a mouse built in, which is kind of neat. Now, is this a good selling point for the Legion Go? Well, again, this is going to depend on whether or not you really like mouse and keyboard, and also when you want to play this, do you have a nice flat surface? Now, this technically is a mouse pad here. I've tried this on a desk. It seems to work pretty well on a desk. This is a reasonable mouse. It's just a little bit awkward to hold, particularly because you got the analog stick here. This is disabled while you're actually playing in FPS mode, but if you leave it in here, it may get in your way a little bit. So I'm not sure if I'd want to play using this setup for hours and hours on end, but it is certainly an option that a lot of the other handhelds, well, none of the other handhelds actually have, where you can just detach the controllers and you have a reasonable mouse, and here we have the extra keys that you might need for a game setup. So I hope you have enjoyed the video here, just this little quick, or maybe not so quick, demonstration of the Lenovo Legion Go's FPS mode. If you liked the video, remember to leave a like. It helps my videos turn up in search results and maybe get a couple more subscribers to the channel. Also, if you want to see more gaming content, not just for the Legion Go, but for quite a few other handheld and smaller systems, then subscribe to the channel. And I hope to see you next video.